Everyone says curiosity is a good thing, but let's be honest, at work, curiosity can feel risky. Asking questions can feel like admitting you don't know enough, or like you're slowing things down. In this episode, we're unpacking why curiosity gets praised in theory but punished in practice. We'll talk about how organizations accidentally shut it down, why being curious early in your career actually matters more than having all the answers, and what happens when learning feels safe. Because curiosity isn't about being unsure, it's about getting stronger. Just like in the gym, or just like when you're an artist, being creative, or just like in life, you never ask how, you will never grow. Now, so whether you're early in your career, leading a team, or trying to build a culture of learning, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Super IO Bros podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, John. I'm Carlos. And today we're going to be talking about curiosity. So let's get into it. What is curiosity?
So I feel like curiosity is the willing to examine and rewrite our assumptions. We were talking before the podcast started and like chopping it up and really like breaking down curiosity. I think we both have similar views on it. And like we've come up with like this umbrella term almost, like how curiosity is almost like a two-parter, like a two-part step. At least that's what I got from the conversation. Like for me, curiosity very much is like a feeling that we all have like dormant within us. I think the curiosity that we're going to be discussing today is more acting on it, and like how organizations can get people to act on it, and how, shutting that, the act of acting on your curiosity can, backfire on the employee and such. But I think curiosity is like a two-part step. It's the thought first, and then it's the action. It's the follow-through. And I feel like the follow-through is what organizations are looking for the most. Everybody has unique ideas, but not everybody will follow through on it. So that's why I said like the willingness to examine and rewrite our assumptions, the willingness to act on your curiosities, put yourself out there, put yourself out on that island and try to rewrite something, reinvent the wheel in this sense, try to improve on the processes. And I think that's the most important part of curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity, the way we're kind of going to talk about it today, it's like you said, it's I feel like it's a bridge between the action or the initial thought and the action.
What gets you there?
Yeah, what gets you there? I feel like it's a connector. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a motivator of sorts.
Yes. And demotivates as well.
Yeah, it can in turn demotivate. So here I have curiosity is the impulse to seek new information and experiences and explore novel possibilities, no matter an employee's role or level within the organization. Now, Einstein once said, "I am neither especially clever nor especially gifted. I am only very, very curious." So that kind of just brings into already this thought of curiosity is not just whether you have the great questions that makes you smart, but it's whether you're willing to try, whether you're willing to trial and error. Not everybody's perfect. Not everybody has the right questions out the get-go when they're curious about something, or maybe when they're exploring the idea of something. It's about the willingness to try.
When you said the quote, like it just clicked with me there. I feel like curiosity is almost like the fuel that lights the fire. What gets you going in that direction? Because like he was saying, he's not the smartest. He's not like, he's not perfect essentially, but his curiosity is what makes him go after this pursuit to achieve something. Like we're not the smartest in the world. I don't know how you feel. I feel like I'm not the smartest person in the world.
No,
but there are certainly things that I am curious about where a peer might be inclined to be better at it than me, just off of like pure smarts or just capability of doing something. But because I have the curiosity to pursue that and he doesn't, that's what could set us apart, because I will go for it. I want to go for it. Whereas he might just not have that drive. But the curiosity is what, like you mentioned, the bridge. It's what gets us there. It's what
It
pushes us in the pursuit of whatever it is that we're trying to figure it out.
It's kind of like hard work beats talent.
Exactly.
In that sense.
In sports.
Well, while most can say Albert Einstein was a genius, pretty much.
Yeah.
But in that sense, he brings it down like I am a human.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very, very curious. I like to figure out how things work. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back into it. So Einstein, when he kind of brings in this sense of he's very, very curious, he's not especially clever nor gifted, he kind of brings into the realization that he's a human, and not only is curiosity the beginning of his success, but it's more of a state of being. It's in a sense, it is an innate ability. Sometimes some more people are curious than the others, but it's also, I feel like, it's also something that could be fostered from when you grow up.
For sure.
Whereas I heard Bill Gates, he was talking on an interview that he said growing up, when he had questions, his family wouldn't just tell him, "Oh, this is like this because it's the way it is." No, they would go with him to the library. They would get a book, and they would read about whatever it is, and they would read to him a lot. So that way he kind of got the understanding of what it is. Nowadays, with his kids, when they see something that intrigues them, they're like, "Oh, Daddy, like, how does this work? Like, what is this? Whatever." They'll kind of go to YouTube. They'll go, or like to the internet. They'll watch a video of how does it work? What's the inner workings of it? And it just kind of facilitates that curious mind on an early age. And it kind of tells you like, okay, when I ask these questions about what is this, it's just kind of like, let's compartmentalize it. Like, what is it? How does it work? Why is it essential? What goes into this to make it work? And those little curious aspects of when you're growing up, kind of like it instills in you a curious nature throughout your life.
And I just feel like that's like the difference maker, and that's what the organizations are trying to grasp. But they got to be like very careful in fostering that
especially
curiosity, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's in any career sense. It's easy to develop somebody's curious mind, but you also got to remember most of the people getting into the workforce are 18 and up, and
not nowadays.
No, I mean, now it could be a little bit younger.
I guess different settings.
Yeah, in different settings. It doesn't have to be just corporate. It could be anything, really. But there could be internships at 16, 15. But a lot of people have to remember, you have at least like minimum 15 years of life that the company did not have with this employee or intern that is just starting out with them. So it's just, they have to instill that curiosity. It's not like as easy as when you're a kid and they read you a book and they're like, "Oh, how does this work?" And then you it's your job as a parent to kind of break it down to them. Even if you don't understand it yourself, you research it with them, and then just them realizing the processes that it is to discover something, to analyze something, and to understand it. That right there is the key conditions for a curious natured person.
Mm-hmm. I just feel like, especially for a lot of the younger professionals getting into the field, it's really risky to, be curious right off the bat in certain senses, right? You don't want to overstep any boundaries and stuff like that, but it's obviously good to be curious. And we very much believe that, curiosity is like a difference maker, and that's where, organizations can see success and growth in younger professionals. And that goes right into our question number one, which is, if everyone says curiosity is so good, why does it feel so risky to be curious at work? I don't know if you want to touch on it first, and then we go from there.
Okay. Why does it feel so risky to be curious at work? Well, let's put it simple. Nobody wants to look bad.
Yep.
It goes back. It could be whether you're at work, or it could have been when you're in first grade and you ask a question. Maybe it wasn't the right answer, but depending on how somebody talks or answers it, you could feel like you're on an island. It's just like, was my question that dumb? Maybe I shouldn't ask that question again. Being afraid to be wrong is a thing I think everybody has. Everybody has a fear about failure, and just to understand that it's a safe environment, I feel like is important, because a lot of workplaces, they don't they reward performance a lot and outcome, but when it comes to curiosity, in the sense of asking questions, trying to figure it out, they want that right questions to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you seen, like in a movie or like a skit on social media, it's like, only answer me the right questions. I only want questions that are important or questions that are necessary in the moment. And sometimes those questions asked by an employee might not be necessary in the moment, but it could be necessary later on, or it could be a problem that was resolved before, but it's being brought up again because it's starting to arise all over again. So it's always something to look at, but there's always that pressure that by asking the question, you're wasting the company's time, and it's being shown in a negative light. When you ask a question, not only can it be somebody could feel, where would I say this? Like, if you ask questions, some of them might feel like it's undermining the leadership, like downing the leadership, or when they don't know something, you ask a question for elaboration, they might think, this person's a little slow. Exactly. Maybe I need to dumb it down for them. They're not getting it. They're not adapting fast enough. We have to be at this pace. And sometimes not everybody works that way. And it's important to be able to clarify, because, you might ask the question, or I'm sure a lot of people have been in this situation where somebody asked a question in a meeting, and that question was probably something that was on your mind. You didn't know needed answering until it was asked. So asking those questions doesn't just help yourself, it could help someone else. What do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think like innately it's just being curious in and of itself is risky. Like we mentioned, like it's just the unknowingness of the response that you're going to get. And like you said, kind of going against the grain, going against leadership, that in and of itself is very risky, because you don't know what the repercussions of speaking your mind and asking the questions and maybe putting some pushback on what a leader might have in place currently, what that could result in. Nobody wants to get sent back down, lose their job, or just have this perception about them that they challenge leadership, they're not as bright as maybe they were perceived before because they asked quote unquote stupid question. So it's just like risky. It's risky to put yourself out there. You're basically like stripping yourself of everything and putting yourself out there on that island so that people can view you. That's what it is to like raise your hand and ask a question in school, or just put yourself out there in a board meeting, or going up to your boss and being like, hey, I feel like we could expedite this and that by doing this process. It's risky. You don't know what they're going to say. So, there's not really much to go around it. I think it's just build the organization, like fostering that culture of curiosity, because like the organization's already structured, they already have everything in place for a reason. So they prioritize conformity, they prioritize efficiency and like certainties. And that's why curiosity is risky, because it goes against all of that. In a sense, it's going against it.
Yeah,
And when
but
you're trying to pitch an idea, when you're trying to solve a problem that you might see in the processes that are set in place, we don't know how much time has been put into these processes beforehand. But
yeah,
we have this unique idea that we might see and we might really feel strongly could, bring the organization success in implementing it. But it's hard. It's hard to build up that courage. So that's why it's just risky. It's 50-50. Like, one, you're going against the processes that are already set in place. We can like almost call them like laws, like what's set in stone within the organization. And two, you're overcoming that fear of yourself, that doubt, that maybe, like you said, like you might have an idea that you might have in your mind or a question that you might want to ask, and you don't know if other people see it too. But when somebody does ask it, then there goes that like sense of self that's like holding yourself back. So like I feel like it's a two-parter almost. Like the organization has to build the sense of, culture around curiosity that then enables the employee to get over that fear and over that risk to then allow them to be curious at
yeah.
work.
And curiosity doesn't just have to stem from wanting to ask questions about new ideas or innovation. It isn't entirely about innovation. I feel like sometimes it's just about understanding. Like, let's say you're starting a new position. I mean, to put it into a very worldwide view, imagine walking into a gym for the first time. You want to know how a machine is used. Everyone around you looks like they're pretty experienced, but you don't want to bother them because they all got their headphones on. They're all going at it, but it's your first time. And you don't want them to think you're incompetent. It's like, why is he in the gym if he doesn't know how to use the machines? So instead, you just look at what somebody does and you try to do it. But by doing that, maybe you can grasp it, but you could do it wrong and you could injure yourself. Instead of maybe straightening your back, you could be bending your back, and it could cause a hernia long term. So it's those questions. It's not just about thinking outside the box. Sometimes it's about just trying to understand what's in front of you, and being able to ask those questions and feel confident in, this is what I need to adapt to this new environment. This is what I need to adapt and learn, is the most important part, which I think also goes back to the Einstein quote. He was just very, very curious, and it's just, you don't have to be a brain to be in the gym or to learn new things. You just have to be curious about them, the willingness to learn something.
Trial and error,
which is where I feel like kind of comes to curiosity, is like a bridge. I feel like there's like a fixation on the intent of learning, then there's the curiosity aspect, a bridge, whereas it facilitates that idea or the want, and then there's the outcome, which would be the question.
I think all of the risk lies within like the error and the outcome and how it would be perceived, because nobody wants to put themselves out there. Maybe it gets accepted in the beginning and they do follow through with it, and if it fails at the very end, all the blame gets put back on them for just simply trying to put themselves out there and trying to like make a process more efficient, or just trying to better an organization. So it's very much so like getting yourself out there and how the organization is going to perceive what it is that you did and the outcome. So it just kind of all boils down to culture when it comes to eliminating that risk, because it's just such a sticky and like subjective thing, risk.
Which kind of goes into our next question. How do organizations accidentally kill curiosity without meaning to? Most organizations don't kill curiosity on purpose. They do it through system signals and silence. Kind of like you were saying, there's already systems in place. There's a standard operation, standard procedures in the company that must be followed. But curiosity can die when leaders reward execution, not exploration. It dies when questions slow timelines and they get subtly like discouraged,
Mhm.
you know, because it's like we want things fast, we
Yeah.
want things good, but you know they question the outcome more than the process, and sometimes it's like you ever seen the saying, if you fall in love with the journey, not the destination, you will go farther in life.
Mhm.
You know, the man that walks every day
Mhm.
will walk more if he falls in love with the walk
Mhm.
than if he just goes with the destination.
Because there's a purpose.
There's a purpose behind it.
Mhm.
There's intent. So just the want to get somewhere, or just the want to go through that process,
Mhm.
you will find new ways to approach situations.
Mhm. Even if that doesn't work out,
Exactly.
you might be curious about something else. And like you touched on all the, I think, objective parts of like how the organization can kill curiosity, like through deadlines, you know, through expectations. I feel like they could also kill curiosity through like the way that they go about approaching the employee, which is like very subjective. They could be very clear cut and just be very honest and just be, you know, gentle with them as possible. Be like, hey, sorry, isn't a good idea. We're not going to follow through with it. But the way that they execute that is very touchy. Like they could think that they're doing it the right way. They could think that they're shutting it down, you know, the proper way, letting them down easy. But like it could also kill the curiosity within the employee, and they just don't pursue this again because the way that the organization handled it, they perceived it as like maybe, you know,
It wasn't
down on them
it wasn't
or-
seen as productive. It was seen as a waste of time,
yeah, and
or like a wasted avenue. I would
exactly.
say.
So they kill curiosity through, you know, just the way that they handle the situation. It's very touchy because you don't know how much someone's invested into this curiosity. You know, maybe they've already more than just thought it through, like they've started acting on it. And maybe their idea is great, and maybe they can, you know, fix a lot of the processes that you have within your organization, but maybe they just have an issue with like or trouble trying to portray that idea. And it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be followed through. Maybe just like, you know, talk through it with them more, ask them questions. Like when I bring up questions to my boss or when I bring ideas to my boss, I have a lot of autonomy over my work. So I come with my ideas already, you know, 35, 40, 50% away into it. This is more than just an idea. I've already invested time because he trusts me to come up with good ideas, right? So once I get there, once I've, you know, gotten it to the point where I'm ready to present it before I move on, he asked me questions like, why this? What if this happens? How might we, you know, make this better? He asks questions to build upon my curiosity. He wants me to go deeper on my ideas. If it's something that, you know, he might think that doesn't serve any purpose, he'll spin it in a way that doesn't just shut me down and say, don't pursue that avenue, but maybe be like, you know, like I said, like, what if we do this instead because, you know, something might not be receptive or it's just not as efficient. So like giving them alternatives.
Whereas it kind of goes back to the beginning when you are facilitating a child growing up, trying to facilitate curiosity, you don't just tell them, oh, it works because of this.
Exactly.
You kind of break it down to them. You're like, okay, well, this works because of this, and let's explore
This
why
idea.
does it work.
Yeah.
You know, let's maybe pivot
Mhm.
to a different aspect of it.
Mhm.
So I mean, a lot of the times when leaders are going ahead and listening to employees, or let's say you're just listening to a friend's idea, or somebody, a coworker that has an idea about something, it's sometimes better when you listen to try to kind of put yourself in the situation of there's always 20 outcomes in like every situation. Why is this person asking this question? You can't just say like, oh, this question is just bad.
Yeah.
It's just a bad question. But you can think about, okay, why did it ask this question?
Mhm.
What resonates with them
Mhm.
because of this question?
Dig deeper.
Yeah. Why are they asking this question? What's the problem?
Mhm.
How can we steer this question and make it into something more productive, workshop it.
Usable.
Not that every question is wrong, it's just sometimes somebody needs a little bit of direction.
A push.
Like you say with your boss, he's like, let's try this avenue.
Mhm.
I don't think curiosity is a bad thing, but if not steered in the right direction, it could really go to space.
Yeah, it could really become a waste of time,
Yeah.
money, everything. I feel like leaders and organizations are the catalyst for that successful curiosity. Like we mentioned, cultivating it and just nurturing it within the employees. I mean, since I walked in at DHL, it's always been like that. Not you don't just have autonomy over your work. You're pushed to do more. You're pushed to learn more, to figure out what else you might like. What other avenues. I remember being told within my first month, if there was another position I wanted, I could start learning about it right now, and I could go and start speaking with people in those positions. So that just builds this belief within yourself that you can do more than just what you're doing. Kind of instilling that within the employee, and I think that's where you get the best out of curiosity, because it's not just the thought anymore. It's the belief that you can go through. It's you're coupling the willingness to, because first the employee is going to have to want to act on this curiosity. You're getting the willingness and the support and belief from the organization, which just helps those employees flourish and just be as curious as possible. And I think that's what's benefited me the most, because I have that safety net.
Yeah.
I don't have that risk. There's risk. There's obviously always going to be risk, but I have that safety net, and I have that know-withal that my boss will back me up. All the projects that I've done, they're very much our projects, his and mine. But he always, whenever he's presenting it to a leader, for the award that they were talking about, he's like, this is yours. Every time he talks about it, when he talked to the head of HR for Americas, he's like, this is his project. He created it. He did everything. Backing me up, giving me belief to, continue. And that's just I think that's the most important part, to eliminate risk. And it's just the inverse of killing the curiosity. It's just the way that it's handled.
Another way is maybe rushing deadlines and micromanaging.
Yeah.
And quietly punishing mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asks a question, or maybe they went a different route because they felt like it would be better. And instead of just talking up about that point, maybe trying to clarify with the employee, they'll go ahead and they'll just be like, okay, moving on to the next topic.
Yeah.
They'll brush it over.
Dismissive.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we mentioned, all those subjective little things. The person who did it might not mean anything by it. They might think, oh, I'm not being rude or whatever, but the way that somebody else interprets it and the way that they feel about it might just turn them off from ever being curious again.
Let's put a little workplace example. A little quick. A manager that you have always says, ask me questions anytime. But when you ask him, all he says is, trust the process. Curiosity. The message received is, curiosity only slows things down. Do everything as you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Which that is not entirely true. Sometimes, going with the grain is good because it's what laid the foundation of where your position is today and how to excel at that position. But a lot of people don't just excel from just their position. If you want to excel in your career, it's okay to ask questions to learn how to improve your position or become a better, more efficient worker. Sometimes what somebody else does, like a coworker, might work better for you. If you ask them, oh, how is it that you're translating emails faster? And it's I've been implementing AI to translate for me instead of just by hand translating. And that saves me about 3 minutes on translations. It's oh, okay, it's perfect. I'll use it to mitigate the time that I would be losing normally doing it by hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's something very valuable to keep and mention it. But yeah, and then you want to go to question 3.
Let's go for it.
All right, question 3. What actually changes when curiosity is encouraged? Why does that matter in your early career?
I think I'll touch on that first. I feel like what changes when it's encouraged. I didn't completely forgot this question was up next when I started rambling about work. But what changes is just that sense of self where you feel confident in your abilities to like create meaningful change. The belief, the imposter syndrome kind of just disappears. You know you can do it now. It's not just like talking the talk, you can like walk the walk. You can back it up. And
Create self
efficacy, it builds self-efficacy, like when it's encouraged, like I mentioned,
confidence in oneself
is
ability.
self-efficacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like when I mentioned the safety net, like I know with all that I'm doing, I have a backup. That's why I don't feel bad when I'm doing like building on my ideas on my time at work, because like I know it's encouraged. I know they want me to go out and like be a self-starter in a sense if I identify something that could use it. It's not a waste of time if I take care of my other duties first, other tasks first, and I have time to continue expanding on this idea, expanding on this change that I might have for the organization, and then presenting it to them. I know I'm not going to be punished for working an idea while I'm on work. I know I'm not going to be like, all those risks are just completely mitigated. I'm not going to be put on an island. I'm not going to be put on a spot. Like, it's not going to backfire. That safety net, like I know it's not going to come back to harm me in any way. So it's just like almost liberating, like, and it also builds a greater sense of self and like validation and just like your belief in your ability to do it. So like when you couple that with the willingness, it's just like, if curiosity is the fuel to the fire, like encouraging curiosity is like the keys to the engine, to starting up the car, to burning the gas. It turns it all on, and it just like, it creates like this machine within the person to think of the ideas, act on them, and pursue it. Like just go through.
Turn on the car.
Exactly.
Now, when you go to a leader,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of talk about you with those ideas, it's whether or not you put it back in park or you put it in drive. It really makes or break. Does the journey begin?
Yeah, it all depends. Like, it's subjective. It's sticky, like we mentioned earlier.
But curiosity does have its, I wouldn't say drawbacks, but I would say it has its some outliers, because sometimes you could become curious and go the wrong direction.
Exactly.
Whereas there's something that I wrote down here. It says, sometimes with curiosity, the employee's fixation selection doesn't have to improve upon an idea or structure, but how it's handled by the organization can hinder the future in terms of curiosity. Whereas we were kind of talking about earlier, if you have an idea or some sort of structural question that may or may not be relevant to the company's progression, it's okay to ask it. I don't think it's a bad thing, but curiosity could be hindered in turn by depending on how leadership responds to it. How should somebody respond to an idea where it could be a good idea, but it's not relevant to the topic? What do you think, John? How would somebody respond to that if they were a leader?
It's tough. I mean, it's sticky. I feel like you have to make the person be seen, because you don't know how much time they've spent, or like, how invested they truly are into this idea. So it's tough. Like how my boss like kind of redirects me. I feel like you give them a sense of validation in their idea. You encourage the curiosity. You encourage the spark, because there's passion there, So you don't want to shut that down, because that could kill the curiosity. So you gotta, in some type of way, make it be seen, almost like you're dealing with a kid. You don't want to shut them down. You don't want them to close off and like build these walls. It's like you make them be seen, but like at the same time, you gotta let them see your view, and you gotta do it in a way that doesn't, ruin, that curiosity. It doesn't discourage them from acting upon their curiosity once again. Maybe try to, like we were talking, like you got to get in their mind, you got to get in their shoes to understand what it is that they want, but you also got to help them get in your shoes and see how, like how we were mentioning, somebody might be pursuing improving upon a process that's already like 98% optimized, but they think they could get to the 99%, but it's going to take years of work. Is that 1% really that useful for that person? I'm sure it probably is. They're like, oh, 99% is great, but for the organization, it's like one more percentage. How much big of a difference is it really going to make? So like breaking that down is rough, but you gotta like, it's hard. It's like a balancing act almost.
Yeah, and when you do have curiosity encouraged in your early career, I mean, you could see exponential growth.
Mhm.
I feel like not just growth in confidence, but like accelerated learning, high adaptability, and people development. Like people would develop judgment, not just skills. It's like I said, fixation selection is more like you get an idea and you chase the idea, and by chasing that idea, you have the curiosity to ask a question about that idea. How does it work? Um, should it be pursued? Is there something that I should be looking into? And you talk to your leader about that. Asking that question is kind of brought on with a curiosity that is encouraged in the workplace. Now let's do a gym example here. Two people start lifting at the same time, right? But person A copies workouts but never asks questions, But person B asks about form, recovery, and progression to probably the biggest guy in the gym, or like, and just people as he goes about it. He asks questions. He's not shy from it. Maybe some people initially will be grumpy, but one thing I've learned from going to the gym for years, everybody's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Like when you ask questions, they don't mind it. They like. I mean, I don't know what you do. They love questions. They love to see people grow in the gym community. It's normally not that toxic. Yeah, there's grunts, there's moans, but like everybody's just trying to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And once you realize that in your workplace as well, you will keep growing, because 6 months down the line, person A is going to be stuck with injuries maybe, or just on the same weight level. They're not PRing, they're not getting a personal best. But person B is stronger, more confident, and injury free. So, I mean, the same thing goes, I feel like, in your career. A junior employee asks, can I understand how this decision connects to the bigger picture? That question turns into task insight, and then the insight turns into trust, and the trust turns into opportunity. So just clarifying or asking about how something works can, because a lot of the time employees are also, you don't want groupthink in your company. Mm-hmm. You want diversifying knowledge. Mm-hmm. You want people to come in here. You want to have a culture. Mm-hmm. I think having a culture is good for a company, but having a groupthink type of culture where there's no diversity in how people think or come up with ideas or see questions in front of them, because you could have a question in front of you, but somebody can perceive it differently than you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't have a question right now, but let's say, how do bank accounts work? How do you start one?
Don't ask me.
No, but somebody might ask like, oh, you just go to the bank teller and you open an account. But then when that question's asked, maybe you were thinking to yourself, okay, what account would you want to get? Mm-hmm. And somebody else is like, I don't want to savings and checkings. Another one is like, okay, I would want a mutual fund. So the conversation diversifies from the start of one question. So it branches out and it clarifies specific details of a plan. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's very important in terms of curiosity.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to mention, I had the idea earlier when you were talking about like the inconveniences, of curiosity. And I feel like it's not only good enough for the organization to encourage curiosity, like what we mentioned, but I also feel like there has to be some sort of structure with the curiosity so that we don't go off on these long tangents where people are pursuing the wrong ideas, like we mentioned with the 99 and 98%, because that's where curiosity could be a hindrance towards performance, especially on like an employee if they're wasting a lot of time pursuing a path that might not yield that much success or make that big of a difference within an organization. So there has to be like almost like guardrails when you're bowling. You're pushing them down to go knock down the pins. You're telling them to go do the work, right? But we're trying to get them there in a certain path.
It's almost curiosity in the workplace, though. It's almost kind of like how we kind of talked about AI, how it looks pretty, it looks efficient. A survey was done, and 72% of managers globally believe curiosity is a very valuable trait in employees. Now, you could say they believe also, we talked about the statistics about this, that it's believed AI is very good to speed up work and make work more efficient for workers. It looks pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But now we got to put it into effect. It ain't just saying, okay, we want people that are curious,
but it's going to go everywhere.
Because there's always levels of curiosity.
Yeah.
One person might be more curious than the other,
mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that the person that's less curious isn't just lacking some sort of confidence
mm-hmm.
in themselves, because you won't really know until they develop their confidence, a little bit more self-efficacy of their questions asked,
mm-hmm.
their understanding, and they're realizing, okay, it's okay if I don't know this completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if I ask questions, because it's just going to help me grow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty much, I feel like it is a trending topic. I mean, from 2020 to 2021, 158% of increased engagement with LinkedIn posts discussed curiosity. This is still a very important topic of what is curiosity, how to enable it in the workplace. And it's like I said, it might just sit pretty like AI, but there's work that has to go into it.
Yeah, because everybody's trying to figure out how to hone that curiosity and put it into the right avenue. But It's just, there's so much nuance behind it, because it's just like I mentioned, like with the guardrails, like there's just, if you don't have that kind of control over it, it's just going to go everywhere. Like you have to learn how to grasp it, and it's difficult because there's so much behind it. It's half, like we mentioned, like it's half organizational and half on the employee. Because if the organization has all the structure but the employee doesn't want to partake in it, it's useless. And if the employee has all the willingness, all the belief in themselves, but the organization doesn't allow them to act on it, it's useless. So there's just so much that needs to go right for it to like be maximized, that I think that's why it's so trendy, and I think that's why it's so hot right now, because it's something that's difficult to put a finger on and be like, this is how you graft curiosity and you get the best results out of it.
Yeah.
It's so sticky, there's so much behind it, so trying to figure out that problem. But
I think another method to understanding curiosity and enabling it in the workplace as a leader is sometimes like it's okay. On Amazon, it's they in their meetings with leaders. Let's say you have like a team. There's certain team meetings. Normally, when they're going about ideas and topics, normally the leader doesn't speak until the end of each topic or idea. And this is important because it is seen as, it gives the leader time to learn what everybody's saying, understand it, and kind of perceive it. Like as I was saying before, certain situations, this could be like, why are they asking this question? You can't just say like, oh, they just asked a dumb question. It's more of like, is this a necessity? That there is this a problem that they're facing on the daily? What about this question is hindering them, or why is this question a problem? Because it wouldn't be brought up unless there was some sort of problem, or maybe a curiosity of how something works. How can it be improved? Not all questions are bad. Some are just probably misaligned.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize those, but not shut them down. And in Amazon, it's normally they wait at the end, because the team leaders normally have the most buy-in from every employee. So when they speak upon an idea, when somebody is still kind of trying to speak their idea and they kind of shut it down, everybody's going to shut it down. Everybody's going to see like, okay, maybe I shouldn't give ideas, I shouldn't give questions. Or so with allowing everybody to kind of speak, and they speak at the end, it kind of gives more of okay, we got kind of like an open mic.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead, let's talk about this, let's learn about it, and then we'll kind of draw consensus at the end.
It signals that their voices are valued,
and
there's no wrong questions. It gives them a room to express themselves.
It also allows for innovation.
Exactly.
In this sort of way, because instead of just groupthink, it's like, I'm just quiet because I saw him shut down somebody.
Exactly.
I
fear it. Yeah.
I don't want to be shut down in front of everybody. Instead of, okay, I've taken all your stuff, and then kind of like talk about it with everybody as a group, which is very important to facilitate curiosity in the workplace.
For sure.
Do you have anything to add? Or?
No, I think that was great.
Well, thank you. Well, if there's one thing we hope you take from this episode, it's this: curiosity isn't a weakness; it's a skill. And like any skill, it only grows when it's used. Whether you're early in your career, leading a team, or just trying to get better at what you do, the question isn't, do I look like I have it all figured out? It's, am I still willing to learn? As Albert Einstein, you may not be a genius. You may not be super talented. But as long as you're very, very curious, you will go very, very far. Because the strongest people in the gym ask about form. The best artists ask why techniques work. And the best professionals ask questions before problems show up. So this week, try this. Ask one question you've been holding back. Not to challenge yourself, not to impress, but just to understand. That's where we grow. That's where growth actually begins. Thanks for listening to the Super IO Growth Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share this with someone who's early in their career, or someone who leads them, or just willing to learn. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.